Democrats' $3.5 trillion human infrastructure bill, one step closer to becoming reality. Or is it? Some news about a Johnson & Johnson booster shot. And the U.S. Open's around the corner, but it's going to be without some of the biggest names in tennis, including Serena Williams. Wednesday Need to Know. Let's go. Good morning. This is Cheddar's Need to Know podcast for Wednesday, August 25th. I'm Jill Wagner, once again joined by Baker Machado, the ultimate pinch hitter. Baker,
yes.
Love having you on.
Always love to pinch hit. Happy National Whiskey Sour Day to you, Jill Wagner. It is Wednesday. We've made it through the middle of this crazy week, and so much news has happened, and it's 9 a.m. on the East Coast.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. We've been recording these a little bit later. A couple people emailed in and asking, is this a permanent thing? And it's not. It's just that when Baker and I do the show together, we're both on the morning show for Cheddar, so it just logistically is very difficult to get this podcast out as early as usual.
This is why everybody's excited for Carlo Versano to come back.
We'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming in a couple weeks. But let's start right now with D.C. right now, okay?
Right.
Democrats, their human infrastructure spending plan cleared a major hurdle. So House Dems have passed that $3.5 trillion budget blueprint, which will clear the way for the unprecedented spending on what they're calling human infrastructure. What is human infrastructure? It is things like Medicare to cover dental, hearing, and vision care, universal pre-K, 2 free years of community college, and having about 80% of our electricity come from clean energy sources. So this is being seen, this move that happened yesterday is being seen as a win for the so-called Mod Squad.
Yes.
I happen to love that name, and I'm like actively pushing it.
You got the squad and the Mod Squad,
yeah, so
right?
the Mod Squad are the moderate Democrats, people like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. So, Baker, can you walk us through this? How is this connected, this $3.5 trillion package? How is that connected to the $1.2 trillion infrastructure deal that had major bipartisan support and that already passed the Senate?
Yeah, so I apologize already in advance to our viewers and our listeners, Jill, because this might get a little wonky, might get a little intricate, but I'm going to try to break it down as easy as I possibly can. Okay, so the bipartisan infrastructure bill, the $1 trillion bipartisan bill that already passed the Senate, that is on physical infrastructure. We're talking roads, bridges, ports. That got a lot of bipartisan support. 17 Republicans voted in favor of that. We're talking Republicans from Lindsey Graham to even Mitch McConnell voted in favor of that bill. But this is where things get wonky. Progressive Democrats like Bernie Sanders want an additional bill. This is a $3.5 trillion human infrastructure bill, as you mentioned, that covers Medicare expansion, universal pre-kindergarten, all those other sorts of things. They effectively told Nancy Pelosi that if this bill's going to get to the House, they want the progressive priority bill, the $3.5 trillion one, voted on first before they would then vote on the bipartisan bill that was passed in the Senate. Well, this is where things get complicated, Jill, because I don't think Nancy Pelosi expected 9 moderate House Democrats to say the exact opposite. They effectively said, we will not vote for that $3.5 trillion bill until you vote on the bipartisan bill. And the problem for poor Nancy Pelosi is she only has a 3-seat majority in the House, so she can't basically lose any votes in all of this. So these 9 House members effectively held this whole legislative accomplishment up hostage here. So basically, here's what happens. Nancy Pelosi has now set a deadline of September the 27th for passage of the bipartisan infrastructure bill, which is a huge win for those moderate Democrats. The problem now becomes you now have 1 month to craft this $3.5 trillion bill. And we should also note here, Jill, this bill is going to have to get crafted to get 51 Senate Democrats on board. And actually 50, because you're going to have Kamala Harris break the tie here. But we've already heard from those moderate Senate Democrats in Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema that they're not a fan of this $3.5 trillion proposal, that they want to scale it back. The problem is you're going to upset a lot of progressives like Bernie Sanders, Pramila Jayapal, AOC, so many others, if you don't vote on the $3.5 trillion bill. So how this sort of plays out is going to be really delicate here for Nancy Pelosi to get the votes that she needs to get this passed, but also for Joe Biden, Jill, because this is his signature presidential legislative achievement that really now hangs in the balance here.
So it sounds like there's a question about whether the bipartisan package is even going to pass at all either.
Correct.
Because the progressives
are holding it hostage
could
too.
Potentially hold it up and say, no, we're not going to vote. You know, if right now the Democrats go back and forth and they say, okay, we're going to whittle down that $3.5 trillion to yes. $1 trillion.
Right.
You could see progressives like AOC saying, not good enough. We're just not going to vote for any of it.
AOC has already come out saying, Jill, that if you water down that $3.5 trillion bill even more than it already is, because we should note, early on in the negotiations, progressives wanted that bill to be almost $5 trillion. So in their mind, Jill, this is already a watered down bill already. They don't want to water it down even more. So any amount of money that's taken off of that, that's maybe potentially less votes that you get to get the bipartisan deal done. So basically, Democrats have to figure out some sort of way. And Nancy Pelosi's very smart at this. This is why she's the Speaker of the House, and she's done this before with the Affordable Care Act and others, is getting the moderate Democrats and the progressive Democrats on the same page here. And that's going to be very difficult, but she could potentially do it here.
All right, good luck with that. Some breaking COVID news this morning, Baker. Johnson & Johnson says that early trials of its vaccine booster shot show promising results of a strong immune response. People who receive a booster 6 to 8 months after their initial J&J shot saw antibodies increase 9-fold higher than 28 days after the first shot, according to Johnson & Johnson. So now the company says it's going to talk to the FDA about approving those booster shots. And if you needed any more proof that vaccines in general are working, there's a new study. It finds that unvaccinated people 29 times more likely to be hospitalized if they contract COVID-19 and almost 5 times more likely to contract the virus completely compared to those who are vaccinated. But good news there for people who, 14 million Americans got the Johnson & Johnson shot. And I feel like they've been left kind of in limbo here. Like, what about them? Should they get a booster of Pfizer or Moderna? It sounds like perhaps the FDA will be recommending that they get a Johnson & Johnson booster shot relatively soon.
Jill, you would have to think, if you were one of the 14 million people that got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, given all the news that happened when they had to pause it at one particular point because of some of those people that were contracting some really bad side effects as a result of the vaccine, you never even got a second dose of it like people with the Pfizer or the Moderna shots did. You're basically waiting in this weird limbo period. So this is great that we've been getting clinical data regarding Johnson & Johnson's vaccine here. And the other thing that's interesting here, I'll just add one last side note, is a lot of people have been interested in the Johnson & Johnson vaccine because it was only one dose.
Right.
Does this good clinical data come out, help any other people that were vaccine hesitant to maybe just even get the Johnson & Johnson dose just because it's that one shot and you don't have to worry about coming back weeks later to get a second one. But the floodgates, Jill, have really opened now when it comes to these vaccine mandates. You're seeing universities now, Ohio State University, essentially saying that they're going to require all students and staff to be vaccinated for the fall semester. They're now one of the first large state universities to require this. Also, the University of Minnesota, Louisiana State University, which I think is really interesting given the fact that the COVID numbers are so bad in Louisiana. We tend to focus so primarily on Florida and Texas, but the numbers in Louisiana and Arkansas are really awful as well. The governor of Arkansas, Asa Hutchinson, just came out yesterday, Jill, saying that all the ICU beds now in Arkansas are completely full now.
LSU, they are giving people the option to show to do regular testing as well. So they're giving them the option to not do that. I think University of Michigan also has already mandated vaccines. Also, we're watching some reports on the origins of the virus, which are still a mystery. President Biden, he received a report Tuesday about the origins of the pandemic, and more questions than answers. U.S. intelligence officials still not concluding whether COVID-19 was the result of an accidental lab leak or it jumped from animal to human. He ordered that investigation about 3 months ago, and it came after a bombshell report from the Wall Street Journal saying that it might. So I mentioned, I believe it was last week, I'm watching the documentary on HBO Max. It's called In the Same Breath.
I've heard good things.
And it looks at the early days of the virus, like in January of 2020. And they actually, the person who made it got cameras inside hospitals in Wuhan. And it's eerie to watch it now because we're still in the middle of the pandemic. It's
right.
just kind of weird. I recommend it. I haven't been able to just like be in the headspace to finish it just yet. But at the time, the Chinese government was still saying nothing to see here. The virus can't spread from human to human. But hospital workers and doctors, and this is part of what the documentary shows, were actually warning their family and friends to stay away from that wet market in Wuhan.
Right.
Because they're saying it seems like a lot of these cases are coming from there. But the problem with figuring out the origin is that so much of the evidence has already been destroyed or covered up.
Well, Jill, on top of that, political biases, misinformation. I mean, this is one topic in particular where misinformation has played a huge role. And that's not just from the news media, that's from politicians, public figures. I mean, Jill, you were seeing a bunch of different speculative reports about where the virus was coming from on Facebook posts and all of this. Then you had former President Trump talking about that it was potentially leaked from a lab in Wuhan. And then you had Dr. Anthony Fauci saying that that was impossible. That could not have been the case whatsoever. So based on your political preference or how you're garnering your news, you essentially came to your own conclusion of whether or not it could have come from a lab or not. And then, as you mentioned, that Wall Street Journal report, which said potentially it could have actually come from a lab, that changed the whole dynamic because then all of a sudden President Biden had to reevaluate the evidence that he was getting. Now, you mentioned that report. He's still saying it's inconclusive at this point, but this is just going to lead to a situation that's more questions than answers. And to be honest, Jill, I mean, I want to know just where this came from as much as anybody else, but I actually don't know if we ever will find the conclusive answer here.
You know what, and Carlo has pointed this out. We tend to think when we talk about a lab leak, we think, there's something nefarious there, that there was like a motivation to kill people or something like that. It could have been innocent. It could have just been that somebody accidentally got infected with it at the lab. I mean, who knows? I don't really even know how it works.
And by the way, the other big player in all of this, and you mentioned this before, is China. Because again, the other reason why we won't get any answers to any of this,
the only player, that's it.
Right, yes, But like they're a huge player in all this, Jill, because who knows what information China knew, and they haven't been really receptive with a lot of investigators who are trying to find out what exactly happened. Were there documents that were covered up? Were they allowed to go into particular lab rooms to find out what happened? So this is why, again, I don't think we're going to know the answer to this. If we do, it's going to be a very long period from time.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you there. Okay, a quick update on Afghanistan. President Biden saying the U.S. has helped evacuate almost 71,000 people since August 14th. And 75,000 since July. Biden has said he plans to stick to the August 31st deadline to remove U.S. troops from the country.
Yeah, Joe, really an about-face from the president, given the fact that just a few days ago he wanted to extend that deadline. And we've even had 2 congressional members who flew in yesterday to Afghanistan that even came out saying we can't even get everybody evacuated even by September the 11th, which was the original deadline here.
Wow.
Now, President Biden also spoke with G7 leaders. They said they agreed to judge the Taliban's legitimacy based on their actions. I also want to quickly mention that Biden's approval rating, it's really falling, Jill. Just about a week or so ago, we saw the aggregate numbers from 538 and from Real Clear Politics show Joe Biden's average polling is now at about 50%. We're now seeing some individual polls showing Joe Biden now at 40%. That is the lowest of his presidency. Again, this could all change because pollsters, you're getting 2 different reactions from Americans right now. You're getting an overwhelming amount of Americans who are supporting the withdrawal from Afghanistan, but an overwhelming majority of Americans are not satisfied with how the withdrawal took place. So you're basically getting conflicting information about how to sort of view this.
Yeah, and it's too soon to know how we're going to look back on this moment, right? I mean, this is a 20-year war, and presidential legacies often change. So, I mean, I don't want to go off on a tangent on this, but even look at Bill Clinton. With the Me Too movement, he went from being kind of this hero previously to now a lot of people are rethinking Bill Clinton's legacy.
Oh, well, from an international standpoint, Jill, 1975, there's been a lot of talk, is this Joe Biden's Saigon moment from back in 1975 with what was happening with Saigon? Gerald Ford wasn't impacted by that whatsoever. If anything, Gerald Ford was impacted more by what happened with Watergate and the pardoning of Richard Nixon than he was with this international crisis that was happening in Saigon, which a lot of people have said, is this Joe Biden's really big Saigon moment? So I tend to agree with you that I don't know if this is going to be the thing that if Joe Biden struggles or if Democrats lose the majority next year, it will be because of this. We have very short-term memories on a lot of this. And, 8 months from now, who knows if this is going to be at the forefront of a lot of our minds. When pollsters ask Americans the issues they care about the most, international issues like Afghanistan and even terrorism barely crack the top 5, Jill. Most Americans right now are super focused on the economy and COVID right now.
And I said quick update, which we kind of we didn't necessarily do.
Quick updates are not in our vernacular.
We don't do quick. Because tomorrow I'm going to have Moshe Winunu on the podcast, and we're going to be doing a full episode on Afghanistan.
Ooh, that'll be good.
We have not recorded it yet, but I'm going to preemptively promote it, and that's because Moshe has been so on top of this story. I'm very excited to talk to him. And if you are listening and you have any questions about what's going on over there, what happens next, anything on your mind, send them over because I'm going to be outlining the show today. You can message me on Twitter, Jill Wagner TV, on Instagram at Jill R. Wagner, or just email me at jill@cheddar.com.
Do you do these long specials on a particular topic very often? This sounds amazing.
No, we don't really do it very often because it's not really the need-to-know model. The need-to-know model is we hit you quick with everything you need to know for the day. But Moshe has just been really covering this so well. Yeah. And I don't know. I am personally fascinated by what's going on in Afghanistan right now. And I guess it's because our lives were so impacted by 9/11, at least mine was.
True.
And so I just think the whole thing is super interesting. So that's why I wanted to cover it. There's now ISIS-K, Al-Qaeda, the Taliban. They all hate each other. I mean, the whole thing is just wild. So stick with us. You're going to want to listen to that podcast. We're, again, recording it tomorrow. But back to today's news, Baker. U.S. stock markets coming in hot. The tech-heavy NASDAQ climbed above 15,000 for the first time ever. The S&P 500 also rising to a new all-time high. The Dow flirting with a record high. And meme stocks are back at it. Shares of the original meme stock, GameStop, climbing pre-market today after that stock saw a massive pop Tuesday. It shot up more than 27% as so-called retail investors came back in full force. The fellow meme stock AMC also getting a really nice boost this morning. Baker, earlier today you interviewed market analyst Doug Astrop on Wake Up with Cheddar. He was saying, I thought it was pretty interesting, these stocks up 1,000 to 2,000% this year. I mean, 2,000%, that's insane. We don't usually give stock advice on this podcast, and I don't want to give stock advice on this podcast, but I thought his take was good. He said, look, if you made money on these stocks, it could be time to sell. Take your money and run.
Jill, all of us are a lot of us who watch the market and individual companies are completely flabbergasted with how long this meme stock frenzy has gone on. I mean, we've been talking about GameStop really more than any other company and AMC to a certain extent for months now because this hasn't ended. The meme stock retail trader in frenzy has continued to get these companies staying in the peripheral vision for a very long period of time. And part of the reason why is because people haven't sold their stocks. They've stayed on GameStop for this long period of time. So it really depends on how much you're willing to risk here. I mean, there's the opportunity that GameStop continues to climb. There's also a lot of these traders who believe that it's about to fall tomorrow. So who knows? It really kind of just depends on how much risk you want to play with. But I do want to talk about AMC here for a moment because they've really been, I think even more so than GameStop, huge benefactors of the meme stock frenzy. And I'm saying that because there is so much concern about will we go back to the normal movie theater experience this year and in the foreseeable future, given the fact that so many films have been streaming on these streamers simultaneously as they've been in theaters. And I mention all this because there's this huge convention happening right now called Cinemacon. This is basically where all the big theatrical distributors get together and talk about basically the future of the movie theater business. And they showed, Sony showed the new Spider-Man trailer for the new Spider-Man film at Cinemacon. And it got a lot of attention because at the end of the trailer, it said exclusively in theaters. It is not going on any sort of streaming platform whatsoever. And the same thing happened with MGM. They announced the new James Bond film, also exclusively only in movie theaters. And so again, we should note both of MGM and Sony don't have a streaming platform, so you won't see this on HBO Max or Paramount Plus. But that's significant because movie theaters are trying to find any which way they can right now in this crazy world to get butts in the seats and get you to go and spend the $30 on a ticket to go see a movie right now. And right now they're banking that James Bond and Spider-Man are going to save the movie theaters.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, the analyst was basically saying, you know, the fundamentals don't support the valuations for these stock prices, right? Like for the share prices for companies like AMC in particular, but we shall see what happens. You know, it's something we've talked about a lot here on the podcast, the future of movie theaters in general. I want to get to some tech news. TikTok wants you to shop on the app. According to the New York Times, they're going to partner with Shopify to pilot this new shopping experience, which will let some merchants use a new shopping tab. It's going to send users to a list of products that you could click through and then be taken directly to that merchant's Shopify storefront. So this eventually could be huge, Baker, because all of these platforms are looking for ways to make more money and also keep creators happy, which basically means letting them make money.
Absolutely, Jill, this is a huge deal, not just for Shopify, but for TikTok, given how many millions, if not billions of people go and use the TikTok app. I don't know about you, Jill. I don't know if you've ever purchased something through Instagram. I have. And a lot of times it'll be, I'll have a conversation with my husband like, oh, I'm really into this new blue shirt that I saw online, and then bam, it shows up in my Instagram to buy it. The data that you get on all of that is incredible. So Shopify is essentially banking on the younger users on TikTok spending money in that app and buying things in there, and that's more time that they're spending inside that app at the same time, which is also huge because they want higher engagement on this stuff. So this is a huge win for Shopify because you're tapping into the billions of people that are on TikTok, but also a huge win for TikTok because that gets people to stay in their app longer and spend money. And by the way, I want to talk about Taylor Swift joining TikTok because this also is a very big deal as well. Fans are losing it because she finally now is on TikTok, and I don't think a lot of people realize that she wasn't on the platform. She made her first post to promote the vinyl edition of her re-recording of Red, which, by the way, is not coming out until November. It's 30 re-recorded songs of all of her old catalog, so it's got Ed Sheeran's in it and all these other people. Now, she ended her first post on TikTok announcing that her debut on the app, saying that she's going to let the games begin, and she started with this hashtag Swift Talk. She has 1.7 million followers already on TikTok, and I guess it's not really a surprise given the fact that she has 175 million on Instagram, but Swifties on social media are insane, Jill. We go through and look at things like there's clues for what the next song's going to be, or that she's going to release, or who's going to be debuting the song with her, or who's going to perform it with her. So this is going to be great for all of us who would like to do the detective work on these social platforms for Taylor Swift.
And talk about star power. She was wearing this yellow dress from Reformation. It's a clothing brand. In that TikTok video, and it sold out in minutes. It was just wild.
So chill. There's a perfect example right there as to why Shopify wants to be on TikTok. Because, by the way, let's just say if Taylor Swift or somebody else wanted to sell that dress or whatever she's wearing, you could then buy that while you're seeing it on TikTok. That's the whole reason why it's there.
The U.S. Open's around the corner, but it's going to go on without one of its biggest stars, Serena Williams. The 23-time Grand Slam champ took to Instagram to announce that she is withdrawing from the upcoming U.S. Open. She's still recovering from that torn hamstring. She called this tournament, the U.S. Open, one of her favorite to play, and the numbers really back it up. Serena won 6 titles on the hard court in Flushing, including 3 years in a row from 2012 to 2014. She turns 40 in about a month, but she's vowing to come back strong. The U.S. Open starts Monday, August 30th. It runs until September 12th. We should note the stands are going to be packed again this year with notoriously loud New Yorkers. Baker, what a shame. I was just so excited to see Serena play because she does bring an excitement to tennis that not a lot of other stars do.
Jill, we were hoping that this was going to be a great homecoming for her, given the fact that she hasn't won a Grand Slam title in so long. Playing at the U.S. Open, coming back from the injuries that she sustained. We looked, and by the way, you even mentioned they're promoting her on billboards for the U.S. Open already. So
yeah.
that just goes to show that this is a huge, huge loss, and nobody really knows what the future is going to be for Serena. She has battled so many injuries for so long. She hasn't won a Grand Slam title since 2017. That's when she beat her sister in the Australian Open. Also, by the way, for the U.S. Open, a huge blow because they lose another star here. I mean, now you have Serena, Roger Federer, and Rafael Nadal all out of the U.S. Open because of injuries. So, I mean, if you're trying to pack, Flushing and put a ton of people in the stands to watch these games, or these matches, Jill, you're already losing 3 big stars already. That's really bad for the U.S. Open.
I love the U.S. Open, too. I love going. I love watching it. I'm glad there's going to be fans back. I'm upset Serena's not there. Naomi Osaka, is she planning to play? Do we have any? I don't know if we have any info on that.
I don't think we do.
Coco Gauff as well. Those are 2 exciting players.
I mean, look, I really hope Naomi Osaka does perform at the U.S. Open, Joe. We don't know. Some ESPN analysts are doubting she's going to be doing it. I'm just looking at it up right now. Who knows if she's actually going to be performing or not. But look, if you don't have Serena, if you don't have Naomi Osaka, I mean, you're already losing 2 huge stars in the women's field already.
Okay, well, that's depressing. I thought we were going to end on a better note. But Baker, it has been great having you on the podcast this week. That is what you need to know for Wednesday, August 25th.
Good to see you, Jill.